Okay, so in the previous video we talked about prokaryotic protein synthesis. So now we're going to be hitting on the equally exciting eukaryotic protein synthesis, which is more complex. The eukaryotic ribosome is 80 Fedberg units. Total size, the small subunit is 40S, 18S rRNA with an 18S rRNA. The large subunit is 60S, 5S, 28S, and 5.8S rRNA. And these differ primarily at the initiation step, eukaryotic and prokaryotic protein synthesis, that is. Excuse me. The initiation of eukaryotic protein synthesis is the assembly of the 40S ribosomal subunit with 5' mRNA cap. That's what you see here. The tRNA-I is brought to 40S ribosome by IF2, which is the initiation factor 2, and initiate with the specific methyl tRNA, but the met not formulated in vivo. So it's never formulated in a eukaryotic cell, but if put in a prokaryotic cell, prokaryotic cell can recognize it and formulate it if it's needed. So again, same IF1 and IF3 prevent dead-end ribosome assembly, and there are just more initiative factors than a prokaryotic system in general. So like you see here, you have a 5' cap, you have initiation factors plus GTP plus the methyl tRNA-I and the 40S subunit all bind onto the 5' cap. So there's your complex, 40S initiation complex. Okay, so the initiation of protein synthesis, a little bit further in more detail there. So the 40S initiation complex scans 5' to 3' to find the first AUG after the 5' cap. There is no purine-rich shine-diagonal sequence on a eukaryotic cell. So it's powered by ATP-dependent helicases. So ADP is phosphorylated ADP plus the pyrophosphate, and it moves forward, finds the AUG start point. Okay, so association of the methyl tRNA with the first AUG signals for binding of the 60S subunit, and the translation can begin. So this is the 5' UTR, which is the untranslatable region of the mRNA. So then the methyl tRNA-I finds the AUG. The 60S subunit says, "Hey, you found the AUG. Good on you." Plus initiation factors, which evidently we won't be getting into, forms the 80S initiation complex. So we're sure it's 40 and 60 equals 80 in this situation. Okay, so eukaryotic protein synthesis, initiation, elongation, termination, same thing we saw in the last video. The initiation is brought on by IF1, IF2, and IF3. They're very similar to what you see in a prokaryotic cell. The elongation has G protein EF1 alpha, delivers amino acyl tRNA to the A site. There's EFTU, equivalent to the EFTU. Then the EF1 beta, I forget the whatever for that, recycles the GTP bound from the form of EF1 alpha, so equivalent to the EFTS. And then the EF2 functions in translocation similar to the EFG. So termination is the E, RF1 is a release factor. E, in this case, is eukaryotic RF1. Okay, so the mRNA is translated 5' to 3'. It's everything else we've talked about. Proteins are synthesized from the amine to the carboxyl. This allows for coupled transcription and translation in prokaryotes. There's greater than one ribosome per mRNA polysome, which is polyribosome. Another word for it, polysome, polyribosome. In eukaryotes, mRNA transport occurs between transcription and translation, but you can still have polysomes in the cytosol. So polysomes, polyribosomes. Everybody got that? Okay. Okay, so that's kind of your major differences between eukaryotic and prokaryotic. The protein synthesis is controlled, amide formation again. And these understanding of differences in between the two is how we can make drugs. So let's get into that real quick. So many antibiotics inhibit protein synthesis. There are three major groups of antibiotics. So they block amino acid synthesis, tRNA charging, or ribosomal functions, which can be subdivided into initiation, elongation, and termination. And many antibiotics can affect any of the three areas. So some antibiotics inhibit the synthesis of the amino acid building blocks. See, like dihydroapteroate and diphosphate plus para-aminobenzoic acid, PABA. So the dihydroapteroate, dihydroapteroate synthetase, sulfonamides prevent the synthesis into dihydroapteroic acid. So sulfamethoxazole, which is a sulfonamide, blocks that binding. And then dihydrofolic acid, which is a product of the dihydroapteroic acid. So you end up left with the dihydrofolic acid. The dihydrofolate reductase is prevented by trimethoprim, which is something you see here. It prevents the recycling of it back into the cycle here, into the tetrahydrofolic acid, which then leads to amino acid methionine and glycine, which, so it blocks the protein synthesis upstream of those things. You'll often see the two sulfonamides, trimethoprim, so Bactrim, which is your sulfamethoxazole, and trimethoprim together, combination products. Okay, and some antibiotics block the actions of specific tRNA synthetases. Isoleucine tRNA plus isoleucine. So the isoleucine tRNA synthesis is blocked by mupirocin. Without the specific tRNA, the protein synthesis cannot continue either. So blocks the isoleucine tRNA by binding to it. Blocks your synthesis. Okay, so many antibiotics inhibit protein synthesis initiation. So initiation interferes with the binding of the tRNA-F to ribosome, therefore preventing the formation of initiation complex. So example being aminoglycoside streptomycin, which always binds the rRNA, and it prevents the binding of tRNA-F, preventing protein synthesis, because it binds to the P site, the active site, the P site where things are going well, and not the active site, the P site, the processing site, if you want, in the middle. Okay, and many antibiotics inhibit protein synthesis elongation. So your elongation is, instead of your initiation, you have elongation. It can bind to the 30S subunit of the bacterial ribosome to prevent amino acyl tRNAs from binding to the A site. Similar to this is your tetracyclines, or it binds to the 30S to cause the mRNA misreading, e.g. aminoglycosides, kanamycin, neomycin, gentamicin, and they're all aminoglycosides, all of these are, which just cause, like I said, the misreading of the mRNA, causing early premature stopping. Okay. Many antibiotics inhibit the protein elongation. So they bind to the 50S subunit of the bacterial ribosome, where they block translocation. So examples of the translocation blockers are your macrolides, like erythromycin, which has a huge ring structure and causes the thing to not go through. Carbamycin, or cyclohexamide, which does this in eukaryotes. This is used as a research tool only, cyclohexamide. Or it can inhibit the peptidyl transferase activity of the 50S ribosomal subunit to prevent peptide bond formation, e.g. the chloramphenicol. The large subunit is the peptidyl transferase, so blocks the activity of it. And again, further blocking of the elongation processes. Some block the peptidyl transfer center in the 50S subunit to prevent the peptidyl bond formation. So streptogrammin A blocks the peptidyl transfer center, or blocks the 50S subunit to block the exit tunnel, which is streptogrammin B, which blocks the exit tunnel. So streptogrammin A binding to the entrance of streptogrammin A binding can increase the bonding of streptogrammin B, so increasing the effectiveness of it. So, okay, and some even affect the termination process on the protein synthesis. So puromycin is an analog of the amino acid tRNA, which binds there, obviously. So it bonds to the A site. The puromycin amine attacks the ester linkage between the amino acid and the tRNA and the P site to form a peptide bond and then terminates the synthesis by binding there. Obviously, when you think back on it, you have, you're binding up one, binding up another, here to there, or here to there, here to there to here to there, here to there. This stops it because it binds at the spot where it would normally bind to the next amino acid. But it can't because it's been blocked. Okay, so that's a quick one. The summary there is obviously the protein synthesis is controlled by amide formation. There's tRNA structure and charging, prokaryotic ribosomes, protein translation, eukaryotic ribosomes, protein translation and antibiotics. And that's all on that. One more video in this section, and then we have a test.